Mm, all right, there you go. Well, excellent. So let's go. Okay, here we are. Fantastic. So, welcome back then to our class. And tonight, our objective is going to be to discuss the writing section. Okay. First of all, of course, in its general aspects. Although, if I'm not wrong, we have discussed that with the group already. But anyways, let us just give it a glance once again because the time we discussed this, it was very quickly and a very long time ago. Okay, so let us discuss this together. Well, um, yeah, the writing section. So you know that the writing section measures your ability to write down in English, but of course within academic settings, which is very important, right? And you're expected to be able to present your ideas in a clear, well-organized manner. Now, mm, there are two different types of questions. We have seen one with your group already, which is the independent task. But now it's time for us to look at the integrated writing task too, which is going to be the focus of attention of our classes. The integrated task, as you can see, consists of reading a short passage and listening to a short lecture, and then writing in response to what you read and listened to. You're going to have 20 minutes to write down an essay, as I say, summarizing both materials, the reading passage you're going to receive, and also the listening passage you're going to receive. Then you have the independent writing task. We have seen this already, that basically consists in you writing an essay to to respond to a question that they formulate to you. But we have seen that already, so it's not important. The only one that we have not looked at is the independent writing task number one. So, as I say, and as I explained some weeks ago, in this modality, you have to write down your essay using a keyboard, okay? That is to say, if you're taking the IBT version or the home IBT version. And if you're planning to take the PBT version, then you shouldn't worry about that because you're going to write with your own hands, obviously. Nonetheless, if you're going to take the IBT version or the home IBT version, then using a keyboard is of tremendous importance, given that keyboards, well, are the only manner we have to externally connect with the computer. And as I always told you, the computer you're going to receive if you go to a test center, which of course signifies you're taking the IBT version, is going to be presented to you and offered to you using an American keyboard configuration, okay? That is to say, using an American keyboard configuration in the sense that the letters, symbols, for example, the commas, apostrophes, parentheses, are going to be located in two different positions than the Spanish version. I showed you how to do this, I think, some time ago. But if you want to change that into your computer in order to practice adequately for this part of the exam, just go to the option keyboard. I think it's in languages and time. The first time you have to go, yeah. And then you get into keyboard, as you can see, and here you change it, okay? Normally it's in Latin American or Spanish, but you can actually get the English version very rapidly. It's just easy. So you just press this one, and your keyboard is going to change. The commas are going to be in a different position. The same for parentheses, apostrophes, and colons and semicolons, etc. Everything changes, okay? So please make sure to practice with this keyboard because if you go to the test center, they're going to provide you with one of those keyboards configured in that modality. And if you plan to take the home IBT version, one of the requirements is to have your keyboard using the American English configuration, okay? So please make sure to practice to be able to locate those letters and symbols very rapidly and easily, because if you don't do so, it's going to be very chaotic on the day of the exam. Trust me. I tell you this by experience. When I took the exam my first time, it happened that I didn't know this. I went to the TOEFL exam test center, and well, I didn't know how to find the commas. So it was a very difficult time. I had to ask for help. Well, very happily, they helped me out, but it wasn't a very pleasing experience. I don't recommend it. Okay, so please learn how to do this, how to type using this keyboard, very important. Well, so having said that, let us get into our special topic of tonight's class, which is, as I told you, the first task of the writing section because we've seen the second one already, but we have not discussed this one. Okay, so let us discuss the integrated essay, the tough writing part, integrated essay. As you can see, the word here is very familiar to you, integrated, right? It belongs to the same type of question that we have seen in the speaking section, sorry, task number 2, 3, and 4. Integrated in the sense that you're going to receive material from ETS that you have to analyze before you actually respond to the questions they give you. In this case, you're going to have to read and listen to 2 different materials. First of all, a reading passage discussing an academic topic, and secondly, listening to a lecture that discusses the same academic topic. As I always give this example, a paradigm, right? My paradigm. If the reading passage is discussing the Darwin's evolutionary theory, then your lecture is going to be discussing the exact same topic, Darwin's evolutionary theory. If that's the case, notice how you are once again coming back to this a scenario or circumstance in which you're reading and listening, right? And now there is a variation here. The reading passage you're going to have to confront is going to be longer than before, okay? This one is going to be composed of 300 or 400 words approximately. And that's the reason why ETS now will give you 3 minutes for completing the analysis of this passage. That is to say, for reading it, okay? So once again, the reading passage you're going to read this time is going to be longer, okay? And you have to know that in order for you to prepare yourself. 3 minutes are going to be given to you to read it. And that must be sufficient, okay? So please start preparing that once again, reading more, always reading something in your free time in English, okay? Now, after you read this passage, as I say, you have 3 minutes for reading it, you're going to be listening to a lecture. And this lecture is going to be discussing, as I said, the exact same topic. If Darwin's evolutionary theory was discussed in the reading passage, the exact same thing for the lecture. Now, there is a little variation here that I'm going to explain later on, but for general purposes, notice that it's exactly the same we did in the speaking section, okay? Reading a passage about an academic topic, and then listening to a lecture that discusses the same topic. So what do you do with both of this material? Guess what? You summarize, okay? You're going to write down an essay summarizing the reading passage and also summarizing the listening passage. That's why I love this essay, if I'm very honest with you. That's why I love the TOEFL exam too, because it's very repetitive and literally like everything is similar. So that bestows a lot of facility to the essay. For example, let me tell you this because I did it very recently and it's on my mind. I took the Duolingo exam very recently, 2 days ago actually. And when I took this Duolingo exam 2 days ago, the exam, although of course many people say it's very simple, it's simple in the sense that the material is not that much demanding and challenging as the one you find out here. And of course, the Duolingo exam has way less prestige, right, than the TOEFL exam, but I took it anyways. And because I'm going to be giving classes about that later. And yeah, so as I say, I took the TOEFL, the Duolingo exam, and it was great because I had the opportunity to see how it was designed, how it worked, and everything is different. Like every single thing you do, every exercise, every activity is different. Nothing is repeated. It's a very unrepetitive exam. And that personally, I found it difficult, okay? Because I always took this exam and I was always used to the fact that everything is similar. It's the same pattern, the same thing. Now in the Duolingo exam, it's not the case, okay? So maybe here you say, well, in the TOEFL exam, this is one of its advantages. And yes, it is because you have all these sections, all these activities, and all of them are very similar, okay? So enjoy that, it's very good. Now, when you finalize, as I say, reading and listening, you have to prepare an essay summarizing both materials, the reading passage and the listening passage. And it's very good because the only thing you do, as I say, is to summarize the reading passage, the listening passage, just as you did in the speaking section, okay? And notice that once again, I posted here the picture of my journalist. Why? Because in the summary, excuse me, dear student, I remind you, you don't have to offer your opinion, okay? This is not a good time for you to display your personal beliefs on the topic you read and listened to, or to alter the information or complement it. Imagine that you are a biology expert and you read this passage about Darwin's evolutionary theory and you want to complement because you say, hey, this information is um, super basic and incomplete. I would like to offer more. No, don't do it. Okay, not a good time for doing so. But if you simply keep up the information as you receive it, better if you simply, as I say, get the material and present it just as you receive it. Okay. Well, great. I see that more people are joining us. So let us repeat this very quickly because, well, it's just very simple. So for those of you who just joined the class, we are discussing the first task of the writing section, okay? Because with your group, we had look at the second task, but we never look at the first task. And this is the first task of the writing section. It's called integrated essay. And what do you do here? Maybe the word itself seems very familiar to you, and that's for a very simple reason. Because, dear students, this task in the writing section is exactly the same to what you did in the third task of the speaking section. Namely, you're going to be reading a passage about an academic topic and then listening to a lecture on the same topic you read about. So, for example, if you read a topic about Darwin's evolutionary theory, then your lecture is going to be about the exact same topic, that is to say, Darwin's evolutionary theory. And the only difference here is that the reading passage is larger. This reading passage contains, if I'm not wrong, 300 words. And that's the reason why they give you 3 minutes for completing your reading of this passage. 3 minutes they give you, okay? It's something to consider, okay? It's not something to take very much lightly. So, but with regard to the rest, it's exactly the same. And guess, what do you have to do with this reading passage and this lecture? Well, you have to summarize it. You have to write down an essay, summarizing the reading passage and summarizing the lecture, just as you did in the speaking section, task number 3. That's why I love the type of exam I was telling here to Daniela, because it's always repetitive. It's exactly the same we did in the speaking section, with the only difference that instead of speaking in your response, you're going to write down your essay. Writing your essay with your keyboard, right? So it's exactly the same. And remember, when you are summarizing, you need to be like a journalist, okay? You need to present to your students an essay summarizing it very loyally. That is to say, don't alter the information, present it as you receive it. Don't offer your opinion. Don't offer any compliment. If you're a specialist on the area you are reading the passage, don't please compliment it. Don't please say anything about it. Just present the information as you receive it, okay? Be like a journalist, remember, very important thing. Fantastic. So what else? Yeah, that's the thing here. So yeah, I was telling you, look at this, very important. You have this, right? And now, well, I want to show you something very important. How much time do you have for writing this essay? Once you read and listen to both of this material, you're going to have 20 minutes for writing down this essay as a response to the question. What is the question? Summarize both materials. Summarize the reading passage, summarize the listen. You have 20 minutes for writing down this essay. Maybe you're wondering, is there a minimum quantity of words? There is. How much? Or how many in this case? 150 words, okay? You need to come up with at least 150 words for this essay. If you don't manage to do so, you're not going to receive a very much fulfilling and satisfying qualification, okay? But of course, all of you are going for the excellence, right? And perfection. So please, if you want to at least have a very decent score, you need to write down at least 150 words, okay? At least. You can write down more, of course, because as more words you write, the more your qualification is going to be. Now, obviously, don't sacrifice the quality of your essay for the quantity of your words. Better to have an essay that is 150 words with a perfect and flawless orthography and grammar than having an essay of 500 words, but including a terrible grammar, several orthography mistakes, several spelling mistakes. That's not a good idea. Always emphasize more on grammar and orthography. But if you can write down more, and if you manage to maintain the quality of your essay anyways, fantastic, because your score is going to reflect that capacity, of course, okay? But have that in mind. Well, let me show you this on the simulator, okay? Please, dear students, to all of you, so you can understand this more fully, okay? So when you come to the first task of the writing section, first thing you're going to see, set of instructions. This basically tells you you're going to read an essay, you're going to listen to a lecture, etc., etc. And then you have to summarize both materials, writing an essay that ranges from 150 words to how many? 225. This is not, by the way, a limitation. If you write down more than 25 words, excuse me, fantastic. They're not going to complain about it. They're going to say, hey, great, right? For example, when I took my exam last year, I wrote 300 words for this essay, and I got a very good result. I guess that was part of it, right? But if you write down an essay with 225 words, they're going to be very content, okay? That's the reason why they give you that quantity of words. It's not because it's a limitation or something. The only thing that is a limitation is the minimum quantity of words, that is 150. But the maximum, well, it's not a requirement. You can write more if you want. Now, as I say, you get 3 minutes for reading the passage, then you listen to the lecture, and 20 minutes for writing the essay that summarizes both of these materials. Next, first thing you receive, a reading passage, as I told you. In this case, the reading passage is larger than before, as you can see, and that's the reason why they give you 3 minutes. How much time you have? 3 minutes. How can you see it? On the chronometer, right? You have the chronometer here on your right corner or on the left corner, and you manage to check out your time, going backwards, 3 minutes, 2:59, 2:58. That's how you calculate. And as I recommended you several times before, if you finalize reading before the time is over, don't press next, okay? Stay there, start thinking about your summary, because you know that you have to summarize all this thing, right? So better if you start thinking about what is going to be your summary, so that when time comes for writing the actual essay, you are not very much troubled and overwhelmed, okay? You really want to have a good time there. So take your time here, read it, and if you have more time, stay there, think about your summary, okay? When the 3 minutes are over, the computer is going to take you to this part automatically. What is that part? The lecture. As I always tell you, I can reproduce it this time. I can pause it.
Of the Roman.
You can see, I can go back and go forward. Fantastic, but this is because, well, we are in a simulator right now. On the exam, you cannot reproduce anything. You cannot pause it. You cannot go back, go forth, you cannot do anything. You just listen to this once because the computer reproduces it automatically. But once, okay, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, once. So please, as you listen to this lecture, that is not long, as you can see, it's 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Take your notes, as always. Apply all your skills, everything we've learned together. Take your notes, because by doing so, you're going to be able to prepare your summary later, okay? When this is over, the computer takes you to the next part. What is that? The menu where you write down your essay. You know this more or less because we've seen this before. But here there is a difference. Look at the right side, excuse me, to the left side of my screen. What is this? This is the same reading passage you had read before. The one that you had 3 minutes for reading, right? This is it. And notice that they are giving you the opportunity to have this reading passage once again. It's there for you guys. This is not going to disappear, by the way. It's going to stay there for the entire 20 minutes. The entire 20 minutes, okay? So you can use this, of course, to help yourself to understand more deeply, to get more details, whatever, but it is going to be there, okay? On the right side, the reply box. Here you write down your essay, as you know, right? Like, I don't know, in the reading passage, we have seen that, I don't know, Claudius was a very influential figure, whatever, right? So look at this. We have the word counter, and to this point, I wrote 14 words. And yeah, so apart from this, you're gonna have the buttons that I talked to you about before. One that says undo, so that, for example, if you blunder and you erase everything, you can just press Ctrl Z, or the button that says undo here, and everything is going to be undone, okay? The error is going to be correct. Now, 2 other things here, copy and paste. You are gonna have those buttons, okay, dear students, and maybe you're saying, hey, can't I take all this, press Ctrl Z, and paste it here, and that's my essay? Well, pragmatically speaking, of course you can do it. Now, the question is not if you can do it. The question is, should you do it? And the response is obviously not. Okay, by no means. First of all, it's obvious. They're going to notice it. Okay. Secondly, what type of excellence is there in copying something? Nothing. You're not going to get a good score. So don't do it. The only legitimate use of copying and pasting here is, for example, when you want to quote something. Let's say you want to refer to one part of the reading passage and you say, as the reading passage suggests, comma, quotation commas, and you copy a very, very small part and you close your quotation. This is the only legitimate use, and don't overuse it, okay? You can do this once or twice during the essay. It's a literary resource, yes, but you shouldn't overuse it because they are going to think you are doing it because you just want to have words. And you don't want them to think that, okay? Very important, guys. So yeah. Now, I want you to please, as I go to get my charger because my computer is about to get without energy, I want you to please listen to the lecture we're going to use to practice tonight, okay? Listen to this lecture. It's about a Roman emperor named Claudius. I want you to notice that this lecture is going to talk about Claudius in a negative manner. It's going to be talking basically horrible things about Claudius, but listen to this, okay? And as you listen, please take your notes, because then when I come back, we're going to analyze this together and we're going to write down an essay for this lecture, okay? So please listen as I go for my charger.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
The Emperor Claudius is a fascinating figure. He was traditionally portrayed as a vicious fool in ancient history books. But some sources, like the novel I, Claudius, which is a great book by the way, some sources portray him as one of the strongest Roman emperors. I want to interrogate that idea today. He certainly did a lot of good for the empire, but perhaps the traditional account of Claudius's reign, emphasizing the weakness of the emperor as a leader, is closer to the historical truth than the popular new revisionist account. Was he really as innovative, fair, and wise as the textbook suggests? Claudius definitely did some good things in his reign, like build new aqueducts and a port for Rome. But the biggest innovation of his reign, his coming to power by paying off the army after the assassination of the previous emperor, well, that would prove to be a dangerous precedent for the Roman Empire. It was a terrible precedent, in fact, and later, people doing the same things as Claudius would plunge Rome into civil war. As for Claudius's fairness, he might have created laws supporting the rights of slaves and expanding Roman citizenship. But, he was a notoriously bad judge, who was accused of making legal decisions without even listening to both sides of the case. He loved violent gladiatorial games, and had thousands of men executed simply for the amusement of the Roman people. He even conquered Britain to win prestige, destroying its indigenous peoples. So I wouldn't exactly call this very fair behavior. The text also mentions his wisdom, but, well, it's true that Claudius favored people like slaves and former slaves, but they were notorious for being corrupt. Many of them amassed giant personal fortunes at the expense of the Roman people, and were subject to bribery. His wives were also famous for being murderous and disloyal. In fact, his last wife poisoned him with a mushroom, and her son would go on to become the Emperor Nero, who was one of the worst rulers of world history. Claudius deserves at least some blame for the disasters of his reign, since someone as irresponsible as Nero should have never been made his heir. I mean, it wasn't very wise to choose him for a successor, was it?
Summarize the points made in the lecture you just heard, explaining how...
Okay. So now, dear students, that I came back. As you notice, this lecture was talking about an emperor, a Roman emperor, and that one was Claudius. Now, this is, of course, the lecture, and now we have to read the passage. Now, on the exam, the normal order is the reading passage first and then the lecture, okay? But just for this time, we did it this way. I'm going to take this reading passage. I'm going to copy it to your WhatsApp group, and I want you to please read it. You have 3 minutes for reading this, as you know. And once you read it, we are going to use this in order to practice how to write down the essay, okay? So please, get into your WhatsApp group. I'm going to activate here my chronometer, and I'll give you 3 minutes for reading this passage. And thus, we are going to use it to practice our essay tonight, okay? So please, I assigned you here 3 minutes for reading this passage. You can start doing so now. Okay, very good. So the 3 minutes are over. And now, well, having them read and listened to that, guys, it's time for us to know how to use this information to compose an essay summarizing both of these materials. The way I can do so, it's by offering you this, okay? Let's look at your WhatsApp groups. I am sending a very important document that says writing 110 upgraded. Please download this document as I open it here as well and follow me, okay? So when you open that document that I just sent to the WhatsApp group, you're gonna find a template that we're going to use for writing our essays tomorrow, okay? When we practice together. So look at this. In this essay, we are gonna have two different parts, introduction and body. You remember that in our last opportunity together discussing the writing section, we merely had, we had introduction, body, and conclusion. Now, in this first task, we really have two parts, which of course makes it easier. Now, something you have to know is that, as I did in the second task of the writing task of the writing section, sorry, I'm not sure why I forgot that word. So as I did in the second task of the writing section, I offer you here the template, highlighting the words and the phrases that you're going to use repeatedly when practicing for your essays and on the actual exam. So these phrases here, the reading extra leads off with, nonetheless, firstly, nevertheless, secondly, the listening passage claims notwithstanding, finally, on the other hand, all these phrases, you're going to repeat them once and again in your essays. And below there, I took the initiative to write down an essay, as I did in the second task of the writing section, for you to know how so that you actually use this template in an actual exam. Okay, so we have read and listened together to these passages about Claudius. And in this essay, I used the template, I applied the template to write down this essay. And well, I think it was pretty good. So it's better for us to analyze it right now so you comprehend how to take this, okay? How to use and apply this. Well, let us go together, okay? So as you can see, the introduction consists of two different phrases. And now before I explain this, let me please call your attention on something. You notice how in the reading passage, although we talked about Claudius, and the listening passage also talked about him, you notice how the approaches or the perspectives they had about this emperor were different. You notice, for example, how the reading passage talked about Claudius in a very positive and optimistic manner. They even came to say that he was one of the greatest emperors that the Roman Empire saw. Nonetheless, when you go to the listening passage, although they also talked about Claudius, the perspective is completely different. Claudius is said to be a terrible emperor, leaving to humanity one of the worst rulers that has ever existed. And yeah, as you noticed, the views on both of these materials are different. So that is very important. You know why? Because you need to make that scenario noticeable in your essay too. You're going to notice when we practice tomorrow that all the essays, all the first tasks of the writing section follow this pattern. The reading passage and the listening passage contradict each other. Although they talked about the very same thing, they have opposing, contradictory views on the topic. You know that, they know that, and you have to reflect that on the essay. Everybody knows it. So it would be a very, very noticeable flaw if you wouldn't reflect that on your essay. How are you going to demonstrate such an opposition that exists between these two materials? By contrasting them. I repeat, by contrasting them. You know what is contrasting, right? Contrastar. You're going to contrast the reading passage with the listening passage. Of course, you are summarizing. You're not going to take a position. You're not going to say, okay, I am with the listening passage. Claudius was a terrible emperor. No, you're not going to say that. Nothing more separated actually from reality. You're going to summarize as a journalist would do, but you're going to summarize emphasizing the contradiction that exists between both passages. How can you do that? By following the structure. So notice how I did it. The first phrase to use, the introductory phrase, is this one. The reading extract leads up with, and notice how I use it here. So the reading extract leads up with, and here, dear students, you simply continue with a very brief summary of the reading passage. Very superficial, okay? As I told you before, right? This part is very superficial. You have to summarize it in a very, very limited quantity of words. It's not the time for you to extensively discuss this. It's not the time for you to extend your summary or your illustrations. No. You use the phrase here, the reading extra leads up with, and then you offer a very superficial summary of the reading passage you read, okay? In this case, how I summarize it. The reading extract leads off with the idea that Claudius was not a terrible emperor for the Roman Empire, and he contributed with illustrious works for his people. Tell me if this is not an accurate summary of the reading passage. It is. In a very superficial manner, I admit, but it is a very important and good summary. Okay? Now, what about this? Look at it. When you finalize the very superficial summary of the reading passage, you go to the second sentence. What is that sentence? Nonetheless, in the lecture, it is said that, look at it. Nonetheless, right, the same sentence. In the lecture, it is said that, and here, once again, you summarize the listening part, the lecture, in a very superficial manner. How I did it? Look at it. Nonetheless, in the lecture, it is said that this optimistic understanding of Claudius' authority and deeds is actually inaccurate. I'm summarizing the listening part, superficially indeed, but summarizing it anyways. And this is the introduction. That's it. These two phrases. Notice how you are summarizing both topics, as you have to do, but at the same time, you are contrasting both materials. Están contrastando, right? Both materials. The reading contrasted with what the listening said. I repeat, the reading contrasting with what the listening said. Okay? Now, when you finalize that, my recommendation, include a transition phrase like this one. I am going to proceed to expose both views and 2 points. I am going to proceed to expose both views and 2 points. Why? Because as I say, you want to transition smoothly, rapidly, from here, right? Easily. Now, any question, dear students, with regard to the introduction, something that I could clarify? Daniela or Arlette, any question about this?
Yes, teacher, I have a question about the, this kind of questions, this kind of, yes, question that we have to summarize is in all these sections. It will be the same, like a different way in the reading and in the listening, because yes, it will be the same. Okay.
Exactly. You mean like the opposition, right? That exists between the reading and the, yes, exactly. That opposition is always going to exist, always. So as we practice tomorrow, you're going to notice it. And when you're on the exam as well, the reading passage is going to contradict the listening, or the listening is going to contradict the passage. Any of them is going to contradict. Like it could be the reading contradicts the listening, or the listening contradicts the reading, but at the end, there's always going to be an opposition. Yeah. So you take that, and you apply here to the essay as we are discussing right now.
Okay, thank you, teacher.
My pleasure. Any other question, guys? Any other thing that I could clarify? No other questions? Okay. Great. Body. The body is very simple. Why? Because it's basically, once again, summarizing the reading and listening, contrasting both materials, but now in a more extensive manner for obvious reasons, right? So look at it. What is the word? Firstly, in the reading passage, it is plain that, and why do I say firstly or secondly? Because if you notice, dear students, in the reading passage that I sent, right, there are always points, as we have always seen throughout the entire exam. The articles have points. The lectures have points, several ideas, right? Point number 1 or idea number 1, point number 2, idea number 2. So what you want to do now is, instead of offering a very superficial summary of the reading passage as you did here, and a very superficial summary of the listening passage as you did here, now in the body, you want to go about summarizing each of the points separately and of course, more extensively. So here, in this first phrase, the only thing you're doing is to summarize the first point of the reading passage. Let me show you. Firstly, in the reading passage, and here I'm going to summarize the first point made in the reading passage. It is claimed that Claudius was very innovative, because that is what the reading passage said, right? You read it, that Claudius was a very innovative ruler. And here, what do? I complement with more information, more details that I got from the reading passage in its first point. That is to say, he came out with remarkable works and reforms to the Roman Empire. Look at it. He came out with remarkable works and reforms to the Roman Empire, right? And that's the first part of the first paragraph. Then comes another sentence. Nevertheless, in the listening presentation, it is noted that, and here what do? Well, you summarize the first point of the lecture, right? Because the reading and the lecture, both of them have different points. So if here you summarize the first point of the reading, well, of course, here you're going to summarize the first point of the lecture within the same paragraph. Notice, it's the same paragraph. We are contrasting. How did I do it? Nevertheless, in the listening presentation, it is noted that the only reformation and creative modification Claudius postulated in the Roman Empire was treason. Namely, he was able to corrupt the Roman armies and to use them for his benefit. Notice that. I'm not offering my opinion. I'm not saying if I agree with any of them or if I believe they're wrong. No, just simply summarizing. But I'm doing it cleverly because I am contrasting. Right? Notice, I'm contrasting. I contrast because I'm talking about the reading passage, point number one. And here I talked about the lecture, point number one, within the same paragraph. Right? Fantastic. Any question about this, dear students? Concerns? Daniela, are there questions about this?
No, teacher. It's okay.
Okay. Fantastic. So great. If you understood, fantastic. Why? Because all the other paragraphs are exactly the same, but with the second point and the third point. And if there were a third point, well, of course, it will be included here. So, secondly, in the reading excerpt, it is pointed out that, look at this. Secondly, in the reading excerpt, it is pointed out that Claudius was a stray ruler and judge for his people. Why do I say this? Because this is what the reading passage said. The second idea they presented was that Claudius was a very very righteous and good ruler for his people. Here I complement further with more details, right, of the second point of the reading passage. He executed justice and collaboration to slaves and facilitated the acquirement of Roman citizenship. That's it. Now, second phrase, the listening passage claims notwithstanding. Now I'm going to talk about the second point of the lecture. The listening passage claims notwithstanding that Claudius was not indeed a just and righteous ruler. Likewise, he is said to have loved violence and the elimination of indigenous weak populations. Once again, I used the same paragraph to talk about the second point of the reading passage and the second point of the lecture. I'm contrasting them, right? And third paragraph is not a conclusion, by the way. It's exactly the same, but with the third point of the reading and the third point of the lecture. It's not a conclusion. You're not here saying, well, in conclusion, no. Notice. Finally, in the reading selection, it is stated that, so here we talked about the third point, right? Notice how I did it. Finally, in the reading selection, it is stated that Claudius was prompt to recognize the value of diversity in his kingdom. Namely, he disposed many political charges to previously owned slaves and women, a practice not very common in those times. That's the third point of the reading passage. And now, with this other sentence, on the other hand, in the presentation, it is mentioned that I talked about the third point of the lecture. And I say, on the other hand, in the presentation, it is mentioned that his decisions were not appropriate and turned out to be harmful for the empire. The slaves he charged with power ended up being corrupt, and his wives were abominable. To top it up, his legacy brought us one of the worst rulers in human history, namely Nero. Look at it. Not saying my opinion, and there is no conclusion. It's just the third paragraph, the third point. If there were more points, a fourth point, a fifth point, include more paragraphs doing exactly the same. You summarize the fourth point, if there is, of the reading passage, and then you summarize the fourth point of the lecture. Contrasting. As simple as that. Is there any question, dear students, with regard to the essay? Daniela or Arlette, any question?
No, teacher.
Okay, fantastic. What about you, Arlette? Any question about this? No questions? Okay, no questions. So, you know how to write down your essays now. Tomorrow we're going to practice the entire class, okay? And last thing I want to show you before you go is, remember, recommendations. Be as objective as you can. It is not the time to express your opinion on the subject. Second, it is not necessary to have your essay perfectly written as you go about writing it. You can write as good as you can and reserve yourself 5 to 7 minutes to check it out and review it before you submit it. This is important. Don't do this. Don't write your essay and stop. Write and stop. Write and stop. Because many people write and stop because they are correcting. They are writing and at the same time they are correcting, and that's inappropriate. Because if you stop many times when writing, you're gonna forget your ideas. You're going to forget your ideas, okay? Now, very few, let's say you have 20 minutes writing this, right? So if you have 20 minutes, use, for example, 15 for writing the entire essay and reserve to you 5 minutes. So when you are 15 minutes on, okay, go stop writing your essay and review your essay. Read it once, read it twice, 3 times if necessary, and check out your grammar, check out your orthography, check out your spelling, check out everything. But don't do that mistake. Don't commit it. Don't write down and stop. Writing and stopping, writing and stopping. No, because that just harms your response. It deconcentrates you, it makes you nervous, etc. Write for 15 minutes and reserve 5 minutes to 7 minutes to check out your essay. That's why I did it, and it helped me a lot, okay? If you're capable, try to write down the fanciest you can and include as much advanced words as it is possible to you. This will help you to make an impression of professionality to your reviewer. And lastly, try to write a bit more content related to the lecture than the reading passage. As I always tell you, the lecture is more important than the reading. So if you can write more about something, write down more details, more things about the lecture than the reading. Okay, fantastic. Well, so having said that, we're going to finalize here tonight. And as I say, tomorrow, we're going to have a chance to use the entire class for practicing this. Okay, so please, as I take your assistance, come in with your kind responses to our traditional poll, and please listen to your names. And if you have any question or commentary, please make sure to express it. Okay. So it's here present our dear Arlette Gabriela. Okay, see you here. Thank you very much, Arlette. And finally, we have Daniela Lourdes.
Yes, here, teacher.
Thank you very much. Yes, tell me, Daniela.
Yes, I have a question, teacher.
Yes.
About this section, you told us that we have the I don't know the reading passage
Yes.
beside the keyboard, beside the screen, so we can read again and we can see again the reading passage. And this is for the real exam too. because today I had the opportunity to practice in another website, and they can't give me that. They can give me that. So I don't know if it's okay or what is the methodic. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It is part of the exam. Trust me, because I've taken it several times, and every single time I took it, it was available there. It's an advantage they give you. So trust me, the reason why it didn't appear probably on that website you practice is because it's a simulator, right? It's a simulation. So of course, not all details are exactly the same, but on the actual exam, it appears here during the entire training.
Okay, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Very good, guys. So thank you very much then for your kind responses. I see you then tomorrow in order to finalize this and to practice together. And please have a wonderful night, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, teacher. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. See you later. Bye-bye.